Yeah.
Okay. And what's something that your parents taught you about money that you will never forget? If you can recall, what's one thing that either your mom or your dad taught you about money that you remember today?
Money doesn't buy happiness. That's such a cliche phrase. And I think a lot of people listen to that and they don't even look into it, but it's a really important thing to remember, because it doesn't. Your happiness has to come from other areas of your life. But money is still a very important and valuable tool.
Okay. And today, how would you define wealth? What I mean by this is, as in money, is money everything to you, or do you get fulfillment from other things?
So I think money is a very, very important thing, okay? I think there's basic things that a man needs, and then there's things that, you know, you could determine as luxuries, but things that realistically people want, you know, being able to go out and do things with your friends without having to question money. You know, you can always have a nicer watch, you can always have a nicer car. I think when it comes to money and finances, everything, you know, beyond, once you get to a point where you can go out for a meal, you can go out with your friends and go out with your family, you can pay for the meal, you can treat your friends and family, and you don't have to look at the bill. You know that's calm. I think beyond that, everything else is bullshit.
Definitely.
I think you can always get a nicer watch, you can always get a nicer car, but you're chasing status at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, money is 100% a tool to accumulate higher status, which is then things that can get you other things in life. Mm-hmm. But if I'm talking about, you know, fulfillment from finance, I think money's important up to that point for fulfillment.
Yeah.
Then your fulfillment has to come from other areas, because numbers, they just go on and on and on. If your fulfillment comes directly from finance, it's a flawed approach, because, you know, numbers go on infinitely.
Yeah.
And, you know, as soon as you get to the point where you said in your mind, and I've experienced this time and time again, you know, when I was 50 and I said, when I've got that, I'll be laughing. Then I've got that. And then I'm like, okay, well, when I've got that, and then I'm laughing. And I've done that time and time again. You know, the situation I'm in now, if you said to 15-year-old me, that's where you're going to be and that's what you're going to be earning, I'd have said, well, I've completed things. That's enough for me. Like, that's all that a man needs.
Yeah.
You know, sitting here today in that situation, I'm very aware that that's not the case. And where I'm at right now, I'm very much looking at the next thing, the next numbers, okay? So I'm very aware that that's not going to stop. When I get to those next numbers, I'm very aware that I'm still going to be chasing the next thing. And so I also understand that fulfillment cannot come from that, because you're constantly going to be chasing your tail if that's the case.
Yeah.
So fulfillment has to come from other things that are more controllable. So your relationships, your education, your health, your fitness, you know, experiences and memories. You know, these are the things that people, you know, they're very much individual to you. They're very important for your character development and building. And that is what life is. As far as I'm concerned, life is an experience. Mm. So if you want to live life to the fullest, it's about experiencing as many different things as you possibly can. And that is where your fulfillment should come from, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, yes, yes. What was your first ever job? And at that time, how much was you making?
Bro, I was at McDonald's, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was at McDonald's. And what was I earning? Wasn't earning a lot of money, mate. Maybe £1,000 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay? But even at that point, I was opportunistic. Like, for example, you know, the Monopoly stickers, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll be on that front window and people be cashing in their Big Macs, right? You know, free Big Mac, okay? Now I'm thinking, well, I'm on this front window here, you know, I'd be tucking all of them into my sock, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going out with the boys, or I'm going back to school or wherever I am, I'm selling those tickets for £1 each. Now people like Big Macs for £1, right? And, you know, you're not making anything significant, but, you know, it's that mindset of how can I make more money from what I've currently got?
For sure.
What I've always looked at is, what skills have I got right now? What have I got available to me, and how can I maximize it to get the maximum return from what I've currently got? Mm-hmm. And that's something I've always looked at from any situation. So sure, I did very much start at McDonald's, but, you know, in terms of like, I wouldn't say, you know, I feel like I learned a lot in that job actually, because it taught me what I don't want to be. And one of the lasting things that stuck with me is there's people there at that job that I looked at that had got like manager roles, okay? And they'd been there for 6, 7, 8 years, right? And I'm looking at them thinking, how have you been here for that amount of time? And it's like, well, you've become comfortable and you've accepted this salary for yourself.
Yeah.
You've accepted that this is going to be enough for you. This is what you want. And that's okay. And so you're still here doing the same thing. And it became abundantly clear for me that, okay, at the earliest opportunity, I'm going to change myself and I will not let myself get comfortable in a situation like this. Because comfortability is just not something that you want to become comfortable with. Sounds strange, but you know, there's a lot of sense to that if you think about it.
Okay then. Before sales, what did you personally think about salespeople?
I think salespeople, a lot of people think of salespeople as bad, not bad people, but they get a bad reputation, right? Now, a lot of people don't understand there's a big difference between what I would call a salesperson and what someone else would call a salesperson. Now, you've got, say, car companies, BMW, right? Now, you ring up BMW and you say, listen, I'm looking for this car, so-and-so, right? The person that answers the phone is going to be someone from the sales team, okay? I wouldn't call that person a salesperson, right?
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, a salesperson is someone that helps someone cross a bridge they're not comfortable crossing on their own. Someone that helps someone make a decision, okay? That is why a salesperson exists, okay? Because otherwise, you wouldn't exist, quite frankly. All of these products and services would just be there and it'd be like, okay, click it, buy it, you come on board, okay? People aren't typically comfortable doing that. They want someone to speak to. They want someone to guide them through the process and make it easier. That is your job as a salesperson as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Now, going back to what I was previously talking about, you ring up BMW, you're going to get put through to the sales team. But as far as I'm concerned, they're an order taker because they're not actually selling anything. They're just going to answer your questions. It's like they're taking an order, you know?
Okay.
And these, like, that's one area of sales, right? I wouldn't consider that as a salesperson. You've then also got people that are doing cold calling sales. Now, I've done that. It's a hard game. These also, you know, get a bad reputation because, quite frankly, people don't want to be interrupted. People don't want to be interrupted in their busy days and, you know, being cold called and that kind of thing. They also get a bad reputation because you're putting yourself onto someone else and trying to force something onto somebody else, right?
Let me just stop you there. You said cold sales. Is that what it's called? Can you elaborate for people that might not be aware what that is?
Okay, so cold calling is, for example, you are ringing up numbers from a list, whether it's, you know, leads that you found yourself. So when I was working at my first sales role, it was for a transport company, right? So I'm finding companies that I believe are using transport, okay?
Yeah.
So for example, I'd hop on Google Earth and I'm looking at companies. Have they got pallets outside? Okay, so they're probably shipping goods. Let me ring them and see how they're moving their goods. So that's a cold call because they haven't initiated it.
Yeah.
You know? It's not a warm lead because they haven't come to me. It's a cold lead. It's a cold call, right?
It's you that's going to them.
Yes, right? Now, typically people don't like receiving these calls because, you know, everyone's got their busy days and lives. They don't want to be interrupted by someone else, especially when it's something they're going to have to pay for X, Y, Z, right? But for my character development and my skills in sales and confidence, very, very good for building that.
For sure.
But I'd say people probably don't look at those and think they're helpful people. Where I'm at now, I have people come to me 3 months later after they've come on board with the service that I'm selling, thanking me for changing their life, and thanking me for helping them make that decision, which completely is 100% different to those two other things that I've spoken about.
Yeah.
Because I'm genuinely helping people cross this bridge they're not comfortable crossing on their own. You know, I'm spending 45 minutes with someone, helping them make a decision that's very much life-changing for them. You know, if someone's passing me £5,000, £8,000, £10,000, right, over a video call, and these are everyday people a lot of the time, people that are trying to change their lives. They're not happy with their job. They're not happy with their circumstances. They're not comfortable doing that because that's not something that they do in their everyday life. But they're looking to become the person that can make those decisions, but they're not at a position where they're able to do it on their own. And so I'm very much the person that's convinced them and helped them make that decision by weighing up the pros and the cons after evaluating their current circumstances, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then they've come on board, and it gives me great fulfillment knowing that, first of all, the product behind me that they're coming into is something that they're going to be, you know, successful with if they apply themselves. And also then them coming back to me later down the line and thanking me and keeping in touch with me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different role to cold calling or order taking, so I would say. So to answer your question, I've obviously, you know, divulged a little bit there. I think it's a mixed bag. So my opinion on salespeople before I got into sales, I don't think I had a real solid opinion because I just didn't have the facts. I didn't know enough. And if I did have an opinion at all, it was probably conceived from other people around me's opinions, you know?